I never liked the desert. The endless stretch of sand, the oppressive heat by day, and the bitter cold at night always made me feel like I was suffocating. But for Zane and Oliver, it was home, our tiny, isolated town in the Nevada desert where nothing happened, and nothing ever changed. So, naturally, we sought adventure in the barren wilderness beyond our town. Every weekend, we'd head out with nothing but our curiosity and a sense of invulnerability. But that night was different. It started as one of our usual outings, though it had been a while since anything had piqued our interest. Most of the local landmarks were just remnants of old ghost towns or abandoned mines. But then, Zane brought up the military outpost, a place we had all heard of, whispered about in hushed tones at school or in the local diner. Rumors swirled that it had been a testing site, something to do with secret experiments. It was only a couple of hours outside of town, but nobody ever dared to go there. People said the military had shut it down decades ago after something went horribly wrong. "Let's check it out," Zane had said, the gleam of excitement in his eyes. "Are you sure? You know what people say about that place." I had replied, trying to sound more hesitant than I felt. Zane and Oliver, however, were too eager to listen to reason. And me? I didn't want to be the one to back out. We were used to exploring, the thrill of discovering something new, something no one else had seen in years. It was too tempting to resist. So, at around 1 a.m., we piled into Zane's old truck and made our way toward the outpost. The night felt heavier than usual, the air thick with the scent of dust, and something else, something metallic. As we neared the area, the landscape seemed to change, as if the earth itself was warping beneath the weight of the outpost's forgotten presence. The buildings stood in the distance like crooked shadows, their rusted metal frames looming under the moon. When we arrived, we parked a little off the beaten path. The outpost was surrounded by a large, decaying barbed wire fence, the kind you only see around places meant to be kept hidden. But that didn't stop us. Zane, ever the daredevil, jumped out of the truck and went straight to fence. "This is it," he said, grinning. Oliver followed, and I reluctantly trailed behind them. Zane, with his usual bravado, climbed the fence first, easily slipping over it. Oliver was next, and I reluctantly followed, my feet scraping against the sharp wire. The wind was starting to pick up, making the scene feel even more surreal, but I pushed those thoughts to the back of my mind. It was just an old military base. What could possibly be so dangerous? Inside the perimeter, the outpost was eerily silent, save for the howling wind that rattled the empty structures. The moonlight cast long shadows across the cracked concrete. The buildings loomed like ghosts, their windows shattered, their doors hanging ajar, as though they'd been waiting for someone to finally step inside. We made our way into the largest building, a 3-story structure that looked like it had once been the heart of the operation. The interior was a graveyard of overturned chairs, old filing cabinets, and long-forgotten equipment, covered in layers of dust. The air smelled stale, like the remnants of something toxic, still clung to the walls. There were strange symbols, too, markings on the walls that I couldn't decipher. Something about them unsettled me, but I brushed it off as just some old military jargon. Zane picked up an old wrench and, as if to break the silence, banged it against an abandoned tank. The sound echoed in the empty building, louder than I had expected. My heart thudded in my chest, but Zane laughed, his voice echoing in the cavernous space. "Perfect," he said, clearly enjoying the rush of adrenaline. But I wasn't so sure anymore. Suddenly, the silence shattered. A loud, shrill alarm pierced the air, and bright red emergency lights flashed on, bathing everything in an unnatural, pulsing glow. The lights flickered like they were about to fail. But the alarm, God! The alarm was deafening. My instinct screamed at me to run. But when I turned to look for an exit, the door we had come through slammed shut. The sound of the heavy door locking sent a chill down my spine. "We have to get out of here," Oliver said, his voice tense. I nodded, but as we ran down the hallway, something caught my eye. Shapes. Shadows moving against the walls. Not like shadows, but like they were alive. My heart skipped a beat as I turned to look more closely. They were figures, tall, impossibly tall, with limbs that were too long, too thin. Their eyes glowed, a sickly green that seemed to pierce the dark. Before I could process what I was seeing, Zane shouted, "We're not alone!" The figure started moving toward us, their steps unnatural, jerky. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. We had to get out, but there was no way we were outrunning whatever those things were. "Where do we go?" I shouted, panic flooding my chest. Zane grabbed my arm and yanked me toward a side door that led into what looked like a control room. Inside, we slammed the door shut and pushed furniture against it, trying to barricade ourselves. The creatures pounded on the door, their distorted voices barely audible over the sound of their fists against the metal. "Leave! Leave now, they're waiting." The word sent a jolt of terror through my body. I don't know if it was my imagination or something more sinister, but I swear the voice came from the shadows, from one of the creatures. Zane hurried to a console at the far side of the room and started fiddling with the controls, muttering to himself, "There has to be a way out. There has to..." I scanned the room frantically, my eyes landing on a stack of old files on a nearby desk. The words Project Revenant were scrawled across the top of the folder in faded red ink. Without thinking, I grabbed it, opening it to reveal photographs of people, corpses really distorted beyond recognition. Their bodies were twisted, their skin stretched over unnatural bones. They looked like experiments gone horribly wrong. But even worse were the notes scrawled in the margins, ramblings about bringing them back, of reviving the dead. I dropped the file as the door began to splinter under the force of the creature's blows. Zane found a vent, and without wasting a second we crawled through it, the cold metal scraping against my skin as I squeezed through. We fell out into the open air, gasping for breath, but the moment we stood, I heard it, the sound of footsteps. No, more like a dragging, sickening scrape, getting closer. I could hear their distorted voices, too, echoing across the desert. "Return what you've taken." We ran. We didn't stop until we were miles away, our lungs burning, our hearts racing. But the fear never left us. Days later, the military showed up, sealing off the area with caution tape. They claimed it was a radiation cleanup, but we knew better. Zane and Oliver never spoke of the files we took, but we lived in constant fear. Every time I closed my eyes, I could hear those voices in the distance, waiting, and I knew, deep down, they would never forget what we had uncovered. We had awoken something that should have remained buried. It had been a year since we discovered the abandoned mining camp, a year since we made the mistake of setting foot there. I still see the images in my dreams. The camp, the mine, the whispers, and the horrible, empty feeling that now follows me everywhere I go. But what hurts the most is the guilt, the horrible guilt that eats away at me, just as it did the others. I remember the heat that day, how the dry desert air clung to my skin like a second layer. The wind, warm and oppressive, swept across the barren expanse, carrying with it a sense of loneliness. The kind of loneliness that sticks to your bones, a reminder that out here, there is no one to hear you scream. The air tasted of dust and the faint, sharp tang of rust from the old mining equipment scattered across the landscape. It was the perfect setting for a place abandoned by time and human hands. We, Riley, Mia, Owen, Zoe, and I, had driven for hours, taking the dirt roads into the heart of Nevada, seeking the thrill of geocaching, a treasure hunt through history. Or so we thought. Riley had a sixth sense for these places where history seemed to linger, where the past wasn't fully gone. He was the one who found the coordinates for this spot. He always had a knack for sniffing out the old and forgotten. None of us had thought much about the mine before we saw it. An old, decaying entrance, barely more than a pile of rocks and rubble. But the camp, those run-down shacks, the rusted water tower leaning precariously to one side. It was something different. It was as if the past was just sitting there, waiting for someone to notice it, waiting for someone to poke and prod at it until it came alive. As we made our way through the camp, I felt something odd in the air, a weight like the camp was watching us. There was a strange, unsettling stillness, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Maybe it was just the oppressive heat, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being observed. I went with Mia into one of the crumbling shacks, while Owen and Zoe went to investigate the mine's entrance. The inside of the shack was eerily untouched by time. Dust covered everything, but the furniture, the wooden beams, and even the old stove were still in place. On a table near the corner, I found a bundle of old maps, yellow with age, and a stack of photographs. The miners who had worked here, those who had dug through the earth until it all came crashing down, stared back at me from those faded pictures. Their faces were grim, their eyes empty. But it wasn't the photographs that disturbed me most. It was a strange symbol scrawled on the walls, etched deep into wood, with a crude, jagged hand. The markings didn't look like anything I'd ever seen before. No recognizable language, no symbols that made sense. Just a mess of lines and curves, twisted in ways that felt wrong, like they were trying to communicate something that couldn't be understood. Mia found a diary, hidden beneath a pile of old blankets. The pages were worn and brittle, the ink faded, but the words were clear enough. I still remember some of them to this day. "The mine is cursed," it said. "The gold calls to them, and they cannot resist. They dig, and they dig, until it's too late. The earth demands its toll." The entry continued in cryptic phrases about greed, and about a catastrophe that no one could have foreseen, though the writer's tone made it clear that they, too, had played a part in what had happened. We were reading it when Owen called out to us from the mine. His voice was low, almost whispering. "There's something down here," he said. I shook my head. "What do you mean?" "It's just a collapsed mine." "No," he insisted. "I swear I heard something. Come here." Mia and I exchanged a look, but we followed him. As we approached the mine, I could feel a tension in the air. Owen was standing near the entrance, his eyes wide, his hand reaching out as though he were being pulled toward something. I couldn't explain it, but I could feel it too. Something was out there, watching us. Zoe, ever the skeptic, joined us just as Owen gasped. I saw his body freeze, his hand still extended, as if he were about to touch something just beyond his reach. Then, without warning, he took a step forward, drawn towards something in the shadows of the mine. I couldn't see what it was, but I knew it wasn't right. Then I saw it too. A pale, ghostly figure standing just behind Owen. A miner. His clothes were tattered, his face gaunt and hollow, his eyes empty pits of darkness. He didn't move, but I could feel his presence, feel the weight of his stare. Zoe screamed, the sound sharp and primal, and before any of us could react, we bolted, running back to camp as fast as we could. I remember the coldness that gripped me as we huddled by the fire, our hearts pounding in our chests. We tried to laugh it off, try to make it seem like it was just our imagination or the heat playing tricks on us. But deep down, we all knew something had happened. Something that shouldn't have. The next morning, Riley was gone. At first, we thought he had just wandered off, maybe to take a walk or look for something interesting. But as the hours passed and he didn't return, a sense of dread began to settle over us. His footprints were visible in the dust, leading toward the mine. We followed them, hoping to find him safe and sound, maybe a little lost, but alive. We found him near the collapsed entrance, lying motionless in the dirt. His skin was pale, his body stiff, and his eyes were wide open, staring up at the sky, unseeing. He had a gold nugget clenched in his hand, as though he had died holding onto it for dear life. The nugget, it crumbled to dust the moment I touched it. The air around us felt thick, as if the camp itself was alive, suffocating us. Riley's body was a reminder of the curse that had lingered in that place, a reminder of the greed that had consumed those who had come before us, and now it claimed another victim. We never spoke of the camp again, never returned to that cursed place. But I can't escape it. The whispers still follow me in the night. I still see the figure, the miner, standing there in the shadows, waiting for the next one to stumble into his domain. The gold, the greed, it's all still there, even after death. I don't know how much longer I'll be able to live with the knowledge that I helped disturb that place. But I do know one thing for sure. The camp is still out there, waiting. And if you ever find yourself in the Nevada desert, lost and desperate, remember this warning. Some places are better left undisturbed.